The vast darkness of space stretched endlessly, punctuated by distant starlight and the humming engines of the human exploration vessel. Captain Hanul Park stood motionless, her eyes fixed on the holographic display that showed an approaching alien fleet. The Karak ships were massive, resembling razor-sharp crystalline structures that reflected starlight like deadly prisms. Humanity had been exploring the outer rim of known space for barely a decade. Their technology was robust but still developing, a stark contrast to the seemingly advanced Karak's empire that now approached with clear intentions of destruction. The first communication from the alien fleet was nothing more than a cold, mathematical transmission demanding immediate surrender. "They want us to simply give up," muttered Commander Jean-Wu Rodriguez, a mixed heritage officer with a reputation for calm under pressure. His fingers danced across the tactical screens, preparing defensive protocols that had been theoretically designed but never truly tested. The Karak's fleet moved with mechanical precision. Each ship looked like a perfect geometric shape, with sharp edges that suggested more than mere transportation. They were weapons of war. Their communication signals suggested they viewed humans as nothing more than a primitive species occupying valuable galactic real estate. What the Karaks didn't understand was human unpredictability. Where their civilization had evolved with rigid mathematical protocols and predetermined strategies, humans operated on intuition, creativity, and an almost irrational determination. The first attack came without warning. 12 human colonies across 3 star systems were obliterated in a matter of hours. Entire settlements vanished into cosmic dust, with millions of lives erased in milliseconds. The Karak's transmission that followed was clinical and emotionless. Territorial obstruction neutralized. But they had miscalculated the human response. In orbital stations and planetary command centers, survivors began analyzing every fragment of data. Engineers who had been designing routine communication systems now found themselves reimagining warfare. Scientists who studied quantum mechanics started drafting entirely new defensive strategies. Captain Park watched the initial devastation with a strange combination of grief and determination. Her eyes, reflecting the holographic displays showing destroyed colonies, held no fear, only a cold, calculating resolve. "They think we're finished," she said quietly to her bridge crew. "But they don't understand how we work." The human response would not be immediate. It would be calculated, innovative, and unlike anything the Karaks had ever encountered in their centuries of galactic domination. In research facilities across human-controlled space, teams were already working. Dr. Jae-Wo Kim, a quantum physics expert, was redesigning shield technologies. Military strategists were breaking down every recorded millisecond of the Karak's attack, looking for vulnerabilities. The Karaks believed they had won. Their mathematical models predicted total human capitulation within weeks. Their historical records showed hundreds of civilizations that had collapsed under similar first strikes. They saw humans as just another statistic. But humans were different. They didn't follow predictable patterns. Where other species would collapse, they would adapt. Where others would surrender, they would fight. And most importantly, where others saw defeat, humans saw an opportunity to innovate. The 12 destroyed colonies were not just losses. They were the spark that would ignite humanity's most remarkable transformation. Commander Rodriguez looked at Captain Park. "They have no idea what's coming," he said, a slight smile crossing his face. The captain nodded. The real war was just beginning, and humanity was about to show the galaxy exactly what they were made of. In the cold, vast darkness of space, the first chapter of an unprecedented conflict was being written. The Karaks thought they were ending something. In reality, they were just beginning humanity's most extraordinary journey. In the weeks following the initial Karak's attack, human research facilities transformed into war rooms of innovation. Dr. Jae-Wo Kim's underground laboratory became the epicenter of humanity's technological revolution. Banks of quantum computers hummed with intense calculations, each screen displaying complex algorithms that seemed to dance and reshape themselves continuously. The team worked with a singular purpose. Traditional military thinking was thrown out. They weren't trying to match Karak's technology, they were planning to completely redefine it. Commander Byung-ho Lee stood near a massive holographic display, watching potential defensive configurations shift and change. His background in theoretical mathematics gave him an unusual perspective. Where military strategists saw limitations, he saw possibilities. "We're not building a defense," he told his team. "We're creating a living system that can think faster than the enemy." The first breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A young engineer named Soo-Jin Park discovered a way to create adaptive shield technology that could reconfigure its molecular structure in microseconds. Traditional shields were static. This new design could literally change its composition faster than enemy weapons could calculate their attack. In orbital testing facilities, prototype ships became living experiments. Engineers would simulate Karak's attack patterns, and the new defensive systems would respond in ways that defied conventional understanding. A weapon designed to pierce one type of shield would suddenly find itself neutralized as the shield's very molecular structure shifted. The military wasn't just adapting technology, they were reimagining warfare itself. Communication protocols underwent similar transformations. Where previous systems were predictable and linear, the new human communication networks became fluid, almost organic. They could change transmission frequencies, encrypt messages using quantum entanglement, and create communication patterns that look like random noise to any external observer. Dr. Kim's team developed what they called adaptive intelligence modules, computer systems that could learn and predict enemy movements in real time. These weren't just predictive algorithms, they were almost sentient in their ability to analyze and respond. The Karaks had spent centuries developing a military doctrine based on mathematical precision. Humans were introducing chaos as a strategic weapon. Weapon designs changed dramatically. Instead of large, powerful weapons, human engineers created small, intelligent systems that could work collectively. Imagine thousands of tiny drone-like devices that could communicate, adapt, and respond as a single unified intelligence. Training for military personnel also transformed. Soldiers were no longer just taught to follow orders, they were trained to think independently, to make split-second decisions, and to view each challenge as an opportunity for creative problem-solving. Commander Lee explained it simply: the Karaks expect machines. We'll give them something machines can't understand: human creativity. In orbital shipyards, new vessels took shape. They weren't just ships, they were living systems designed to adapt and survive. Each component could potentially reconfigure itself, each system could learn and improve. The human response to the Karak's attack was becoming something entirely unexpected. It wasn't just a military buildup, it was a fundamental reimagining of technological interaction. News spread quickly through human-controlled space. The initial shock and terror of the first attack transformed into something else: a collective determination. Every research facility, every engineering team, every military unit became part of a massive, coordinated effort. "We're not just defending," Dr. Kim would later say in a classified briefing. "We're evolving." The Karaks continued to monitor human space, believing their initial attack had fundamentally broken human resistance. They had no idea that with each passing day, humanity was becoming something entirely new. A species that didn't just adapt, but reimagined adaptation itself. The psychological warfare began quietly, almost imperceptibly. Commander Yeonwoo Park understood that the most powerful weapon wasn't technology, but the ability to break an enemy's mental framework. The first test came during a small skirmish near the Orion cluster. Karak's communication networks suddenly found themselves bombarded with impossible signals. These weren't simple jamming frequencies, they were carefully designed audiovisual patterns that caused genuine cognitive disruption. Human communication teams had discovered something profound: the Karak's neural systems processed information differently from biological organisms. Their technological consciousness relied on precise, predictable patterns. By introducing controlled chaos, humans could create genuine confusion. Imagine a perfectly engineered machine suddenly experiencing something it cannot comprehend. That was the weapon humans were developing. Dr. Saram Chen, a neurological warfare specialist, had spent months studying Karak's communication protocols. Her team created transmission signals that looked like random noise but contained deeply sophisticated psychological triggers. These signals could induce momentary computational hesitation, a split second of uncertainty that could mean victory or defeat in battle. The Carracks first noticed something was wrong during a standard patrol mission. Their ship suddenly experienced synchronized communication failures. Navigation systems flickered. Weapon calibrations became slightly off-center. Nothing catastrophic, but enough to create genuine uncertainty. Commander Dahan of the Carracks fleet couldn't understand what was happening. Their perfect, mathematically designed communication networks were experiencing unexplained interruptions. Each interruption was brief, sometimes lasting just microseconds, but consistent. Human ships would appear, transmit these strange signals, and then vanish before traditional response mechanisms could be activated. It was psychological warfare taken to an entirely new level. The signals weren't just random. They were carefully designed mathematical sequences that mimicked Carracks communication but introduced subtle irregularities. To a human, they might seem like meaningless noise. To a Carracks computational system, they were like a virus slowly eating away at logical processing. Military training for human personnel changed dramatically. Soldiers were no longer just taught to fight, they were trained to think creatively, to understand psychological manipulation, to see every interaction as a potential strategic opportunity. In one remarkable demonstration, a single human communication specialist managed to temporarily disable an entire Carracks patrol fleet without firing a single weapon. The method? A series of precisely calculated transmission frequencies that induced computational confusion. The Carracks had never encountered an enemy that attacked their very method of thinking. Their entire civilization was built on predictable, mathematically precise interactions. Humans were introducing something entirely new, controlled, strategic unpredictability. Communication intercepts showed increasing Carracks frustration. Their reports became filled with computational anomalies, unexplained system failures, and growing uncertainty. Where they once spoke with cold mathematical precision, now there were hints of something close to panic. Commander Park would later describe their strategy simply: "We're not fighting their technology. We're fighting their understanding of reality." Each psychological attack was meticulously planned. Teams of linguists, mathematicians, neural scientists, and military strategists worked together. They weren't just developing weapons, they were creating an entirely new form of warfare that the Carracks had no framework to understand. The most terrifying weapon wasn't a gun or a ship. It was the human capacity to think beyond established rules, to see opportunities where others saw only limitations. Carracks leadership began to realize something fundamental: they were facing an enemy that didn't just want to win. They wanted to fundamentally reshape the understanding of conflict itself. And they were succeeding, one impossible transmission at a time. The Battle of Proxima Centauri would become a legendary moment in human military history. Captain Hanul Park positioned her fleet with a strategy that defied every known tactical doctrine. The Carracks fleet approached, massive and seemingly invincible, their crystalline ships reflecting starlight like deadly mirrors. But humans had learned something crucial: predictability was weakness. The initial Carracks attack followed their standard mathematical precision. Weapon systems fired with calculated trajectories, expecting standard defensive maneuvers. Instead, human ships moved in patterns that seemed almost random, but were actually the result of complex adaptive algorithms developed by their most brilliant strategists. Commander Rodriguez managed the fleet's quantum communication network. Each ship wasn't just a weapon, it was a living, thinking entity capable of making split-second decisions. Where Carracks ships followed predetermined attack sequences, human vessels responded dynamically, almost like a living organism. One human destroyer, barely half the size of a standard Carracks battleship, managed to disable 3 enemy vessels through a combination of technological manipulation and psychological disruption. Its weapons weren't just firing, they were learning and adapting with each millisecond of combat. The psychological warfare developed in previous encounters now reached its peak. Human transmission signals created genuine confusion in the Carracks computational systems. Navigation became challenging. Weapon targeting systems experienced unexplained interference. Dr. Jaiwo Kim's adaptive shield technology proved revolutionary. Carrack's weapons that should have destroyed human ships found themselves neutralized as shields literally changed molecular composition in microseconds. What worked in one moment became ineffective in the next. Commander Dahan watched in growing horror. His perfect, mathematically designed fleet was being dismantled by an enemy that didn't follow any established rules of warfare. Human ships moved with an unpredictability that seemed to defy physical limitations. Strategic points became fluid. Where traditional military doctrine suggested holding specific positions, human forces created what strategists would later call dynamic engagement zones, areas of combat that constantly shifted and changed, making traditional attack patterns useless. Communication intercepts revealed growing Carrack's panic. Their reports became filled with computational anomalies, unexplained system failures, and increasing uncertainty. Mathematical precision was being replaced by something they couldn't comprehend: human creativity. A single human frigate, using an advanced quantum communication network, managed to temporarily disable an entire Carrack's battle group. Not through direct weapon assault, but by introducing computational confusion that spread like a technological virus. The battle wasn't just about destroying ships. It was about dismantling an entire military philosophy. Smaller human vessels worked as collective intelligence, sharing information and adapting faster than the Carracks could process. Each ship wasn't just a weapon, it was part of a larger, living network that thought and responded as a unified entity. Commander Park understood something fundamental: victory wasn't about overwhelming force. It was about adaptability, creativity, and the ability to transform limitations into opportunities. By battle's end, the Carrack's fleet had lost over 70% of its vessels. More importantly, they had lost something more crucial: their belief in their own invincibility. The perfect, mathematically precise military machine had encountered an enemy that didn't just fight differently, but thought differently. Survivors would later describe the battle as something beyond traditional warfare. It wasn't a conflict between two military forces, it was a collision between two fundamentally different ways of understanding existence. The Proxima Centauri engagement became more than a battle. It was a statement: humanity would not be conquered. They would adapt, transform, and ultimately triumph. As the remaining Carrack ships retreated, something became clear. This wasn't just a military victory. This was the moment humanity announced its arrival on the galactic stage. The final confrontation lasted less than 3 standard galactic hours, but its impact would reshape civilization forever. Humanity's combined fleet approached the Carrack's home systems with a precision that seemed almost supernatural. Commander Yeonwoo Park stood on the bridge of the flagship, her eyes reflecting the holographic displays showing the systematic destruction of the once mighty Carrack's imperial defenses. What had begun as a simple defensive action had transformed into a complete dismantling of an entire civilization's military infrastructure. The Carrack's leadership, once confident in their technological superiority, now watched in horror as their most advanced systems became completely ineffective. Human technology had evolved beyond mere weaponry, it had become a living, adaptive intelligence that could predict and neutralize threats before they even materialized. Dr. Jae-woo Kim's final technological breakthrough proved to be the ultimate weapon. A network of quantum communication devices allowed human ships to operate with a collective intelligence that made traditional military strategies obsolete. Each vessel became part of a larger, thinking organism that could adapt faster than any known computational system. The battle wasn't just about destruction. It was about demonstrating a fundamental difference in approach to existence. Where the Carracks saw the universe as a mathematical equation to be solved, humans saw it as a canvas of infinite possibilities. Surviving Carrack's communication logs would later reveal their complete bewilderment. Their reports became increasingly desperate, filled with computational anomalies and unexplained system failures. The perfect, predictable machine was being dismantled by something it could not comprehend: human creativity. One remarkable moment captured during the final assault showed a single human frigate neutralizing an entire Carrack's defensive grid. Not through overwhelming firepower, but through a series of adaptive signals that literally confused the enemy's computational systems. Commander Rodriguez managed the fleet's quantum network with a calm that seemed almost supernatural. Each ship moved with a purpose that went beyond traditional military doctrine. They were living, thinking entities that could make split-second decisions that defied mathematical prediction. The Karak's home systems fell systematically. Their most advanced defensive platforms, which had protected their civilization for centuries, became nothing more than expensive space debris. Entire planetary defense networks collapsed under the weight of human adaptive technology. What made the victory truly remarkable was its precision. Humanity wasn't seeking total destruction, they were demonstrating a new way of understanding conflict and existence. Civilian infrastructure remained largely intact, a testament to the strategic brilliance of human leadership. Dr. Saram Chen, the psychological warfare specialist, had prepared something extraordinary. As the final defensive systems fell, human ships began broadcasting signals that did more than just communicate, they offered a path forward. It was a message of potential cooperation, of understanding, of evolution. The Karak's leadership had a choice: surrender or complete annihilation. Most chose surrender. In the aftermath, humanity didn't seek revenge. Instead, they offered integration. The defeated Karaks would become part of a larger, more dynamic civilization, one that valued creativity over mathematical precision, adaptability over rigid thinking. Captain Hanul Park's final transmission to the Karak's leadership became legendary. "We didn't come to destroy," she said. "We came to show you a different way of existing." Galactic historians would later mark this moment as the true beginning of humanity's ascendancy. It wasn't just a military victory, it was a fundamental reshaping of how intelligent civilizations could interact. The 12 colonies initially destroyed became monuments, research centers, places of remembrance and innovation. Each represented the moment humanity refused to be defined by someone else's limitations. As the dust settled, one thing became clear. The galaxy had encountered something entirely new. A species that didn't just survive, but transformed every challenge into an opportunity for growth. Humanity had arrived. And the universe would never be the same again.